Well, I want to invite everyone to join us. If you're joining me from my Facebook group, thank you so much. If not, from my page or from my personal profile, I welcome you to this career chat. And with me today is Joey, one of my good friends, and he's agreed to come on to kind of talk a little bit about what he does as a hiring manager and kind of reveal some secrets about resumes and interviews. And I hope that this will be valuable for everyone. So, Joey, let us know who you are and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me on. My name is Joey. I'm currently an IT support manager for a fintech startup called Ripple. I've been there for about 2 years, and being a manager, I do a lot of hiring and people management. Previously, I was at a different startup in LA for about a year, and that's where I started becoming a manager. Before I was a manager, I was at Google for about 7 years with the corporate engineering team there. Even though I wasn't a manager, I was involved with a lot of interview panels there as well.
Nice, nice, nice. So, how many resumes do you think you've seen in your lifetime now?
If I had a penny for every resume at the screen, I'd be extremely rich right now. Hundreds of resumes. So in my previous company, we were a very small company, so we didn't have dedicated resume screeners in our recruiting department.
Hmm.
So I would actually be the ones to go into the system to actually be the first ones to set eye on all the resumes that came in, and I'd be the ones that would go yay or nay on all those resumes. So I've seen a lot of resumes,
Wow.
hundreds.
Wow, yeah. Yeah, being a smaller company having to do all of that on your own, that's different from my experience because I come from a bigger company and so we do have ATSs, so applicant tracking systems that sort out certain resumes. So the only ones that we see are the ones that actually, pass the score for it. So that's definitely different for you to kind of see all different types of resumes, probably not so good resumes, right? So, what do you think are the have been the biggest resume mistakes that you've seen?
I think the biggest mistake is that people treat their resume as if it's a job description. So it is important to highlight on your resume responsibilities or tasks that you have in your previous positions. But what you want to do with your resume is actually sell yourself. My rule of thumb is, what did you do in your previous jobs when you're writing those bullet points on your resume? What do you do faster, cheaper, better than someone else? Let's say, take a very basic example. Let's say you were a waiter or a waitress at a restaurant. Very regular job, you would think it'd be hard to pump that up on your resume, right? But think about, how are you a better waiter or waitress than someone else? Because that's what is going to catch the eye of someone who's looking at those resumes, right? Someone could have 50 resumes if they're hiring for a waiter or waitress at their restaurant. And it's very likely that all 50 resumes, when they go through it, all the bullet points will look the same, right? People that have waiting experience, they'll apply. They'll say, "I waited on tables, I served food, I took orders, I brought orders out to the customers from the kitchen." How is your resume going to look different? So I think that's probably the biggest mistake and kind of like the biggest piece of advice I would give to people.
Nice. I think the same way. I've seen resumes that are just listing their job duties, and it's like, well, I already, as a recruiter, I'm recruiting for this job opening, so I already know what people need to be doing.
Exactly.
So I don't need just a summary of what you've done. I want to know how well you did something. Like you said, how much better than other people you've done it, what kind of benefits that you've created for the company or for the people around you, things like that. So yeah, I'm always looking for those things. I'm always trying to tell people this is what you need to do in your resume. Awesome, awesome. So then you kind of already touched on this. So what else do you look for in a resume then?
Um, I like resumes to be quite concise. If you put yourself in the shoes of someone like me who has to go through a lot of resumes, it's not likely that the person who has to read a lot of resumes will have time to read a 4 or 5 page resume. And I found in my experience that a 1 or maybe 2 page resume could be just as effective. And there are a few different ways you can go about kind of making your resume more concise. But probably some of the most effective resumes that caught my eye the most and made me really want to proceed to the interview stage. A lot of them were resumes that were very concise, very well written. They were probably only 1, maybe 2 pages.
Yeah, so I'm actually curious. So you're okay with 2 pages, and you come from the tech world, so I think a lot of people have a lot of things to kind of list out. So what are your thoughts on, 2 pages, one or 2 pages, which was better?
I try not to be too picky about the length. To be completely honest, I'm personally actively hiring for 2 roles right now for the company. So I've been looking at a lot of resumes for a lot of candidates. Most of the resumes I see tend to be a little bit longer, and sometimes where you are in the world, what region, sometimes by convention that sways the length of the resumes as well. I don't personally have a hard limit on the number of pages of the resumes. I think for the IT world that I'm in specifically, people could probably save a lot of paper and ink if they didn't list out every single system or skill that they have. It's very common in the technical world for people to list out what skills or systems they have experience in, and then they'll list out 100 of them. That's probably not necessary. So for me personally, that might not be so helpful to see, but I have talked to other engineering hiring managers where, depending on the type of engineering they're in, they do find that helpful. So I think it varies a little bit by the exact type of role you're going for.
Sure, sure, and I agree with that. I think my thing is when I tell people try to keep it down to 1 page is because they they're just adding too much stuff that's fluff in it, and that's why it's become 2 pages. So I think just like for the rule of thumb for me is like, hey, just try to bring it down to 1 page because you really need this bullet point. Is the recruiter is the recruiter really going to care about this bullet point? So that's why I always say bring it down to 1 page. But of course, there are going to be different positions, different industries out there that it's going to require you to put a little bit more, especially if you're going to be like an executive C-suite person. Yeah, you're going to want to list out more of the experiences and more of your bullet points. But if you're kind of just, in a lower position or even mid-level position, I feel like 1, 2 pages would be a maximum, and at least that's for me. And some
Yeah,
of it
I
is
agree with
very
that.
subjective, right? As a recruiter too.
Definitely.
So let's move on to talking a little bit about interviews then. Interviews, I feel like, are a thing that people get really nervous about. And I guess they have a right to be because, it's not something that you practice a lot. And like a lot is writing on an interview, you feel like it at least. So what are some good preparation tips that you have for job seekers?
The best thing you can do is to do mock interviews, right? So it's basically practice makes perfect, right? It's like anything in life, you want to just get as much practice in as possible. If you have any friends that that do interviews for their company, even if they're not a hiring manager, it's fine. You can sit down with them and just go through some sample questions that you feel like might be common for your role. They might have some ideas what questions they would like to ask you, or you can pull some industry specific questions, interview questions off the internet. And a good way to do that is answer every question, obviously, as if it was a real interview. And then after every single question, the two of you can kind of pause the interview, if you will, and then exchange some feedback, or you can wait till the very end and get some feedback that way. So it's not just the feedback that's really helpful, but the more you put yourself into that interview situation, the more hopefully you get accustomed to it and you feel less and less pressure, which means you'll probably just be naturally better when you go to your actual interviews.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Mock interviews are so important, and it's just something that doesn't happen too often. I think either people are too scared to ask for it or they don't know who to ask for to help with the mock interview. Just so everyone knows, I'm available for mock interviews, so contact me. But like I think it's like anything else where when practice just makes you feel more confident, just makes you feel more comfortable. And that's what you want in an interview is to be comfortable so that you can kind of show your own personality. You're not this like really uptight, nervous person that, stumbles through all of your words. So, because you want to be able to speak to your skills and what you actually know. So, I think practicing is super important. I see that there are a couple of people, 19 people watching. So if you are watching and you have any questions about, mock interviews, let us know in the comments. I would love to hear, or just let me know who's here. Any of our friends that are joining, put something in the comments. Just like put a like, but at least a like button. Awesome. So, what's an interview question that you like to ask? Do you have one that you like? Oh, what's wrong?
No, I just got a scratch in my ear.
Oh, okay.
It's all good.
I thought you were telling me something. I was like, what? Okay.
Nope. I was just tell you. Doug and I are
uh,
good friends. We're cool.
so yeah,
What interview questions I would ask?
Yeah.
What I would like to do, especially if I have like a slightly longer interview, because sometimes depending on your company or just your schedule or the recruiter, if I have a longer interview, I have more time to work with. Maybe it's like a 45-minute or 1 hour interview. I like to ask like a sneaky icebreaker type question, something that applies to the industry, right? So I interview for corporate IT, I interview for technical roles, right? So a common one I would ask is, oh, what kind of new technology news are you interested in, or have you seen that you're trending that you're interested in, right? And it kind of serves two purpose, right? It's kind of like an icebreaker. It's not like something that is likely to make someone nervous if you jump right in and your first question is like, explain how this super complicated system works. You're probably going to freak them out, right? um, but it also tells me that question specifically I really like, because it helps me gauge how passionate the candidate is about the industry in general, right? There are a lot of people that might be really, really qualified, can definitely do the work I need them to do. But what I also need from them is engagement, is they need to show some sort of passion for the industry that we're in. So that's kind of one of the questions I like to kick it off with. The rest of the questions, they are more like stereotypical. And again, it's really specific to the role. I tend to lean more towards questions about technical knowledge because I tend to do the technical parts of the interview in my interview panel. As a hiring manager, also want to know what type of career ambitions they have. And again, it's really about engagement, right? I want to make sure that as much as we need someone to do the work because we're hiring for that role, I want to make sure the role is a good fit for the candidate. And that's an advantage for me as the hiring manager as well. Because if we hire someone who's passionate, who's engaged, as well as there's room within the position for this person to grow, then I know that they're going to stay engaged and they're going to stay with the company for a longer period of time, most likely. Whereas we could hire someone who's maybe extremely qualified, they've kind of maybe been there, done that a little bit, if you will. Maybe their passion is meh. And if you hire that person, they can do the job, but maybe they're not so engaged. And then, sometimes I might wonder, well, 1 or 2 or 3 years down the road, if they're not engaged to start, they may not be engaged later on.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And I like that you said that you use that as an icebreaker. Um, and I hope this is the case, but I feel like as a recruiter or as a hiring manager person that's interviewing, you want the person to succeed, right? You're not trying to um, see them fail. It's not like a thing where it's like, ooh, how can I make this horrible for this person now? Right. So I think that a lot of people get so nervous going into an interview thinking that they're gonna, mess up. What are they gonna ask me? They're gonna purposely trick me. No, these are questions that are things. The interviews are asking questions that are important, and they usually try to do it in a very conversational manner so that you feel comfortable. Do you agree?
I definitely agree. Well, I agree to the extent that I will say I have encountered interviewers, especially earlier in my career before I started being an interviewer when I was an interviewee. Um, I have met my fair share of interviewers that didn't keep that in mind because, again, like you said, they want you to succeed. Like me, I do. In the last 24 hours, I've done 4 interviews. Okay. I don't really want to do a whole ton of interviews. I want as many of the candidates I talk to be awesome candidates, to be great fits for the position. So I can stop interviewing and I can hire someone so I can start working. Right. So, yeah, I totally agree. Technically, every interviewer should be on your side. They should all want you to succeed. But having said that, some interviewers sometimes don't keep that at the forefront, when they're conducting the interview, and sometimes they don't give as much effort as they should in making sure that um, they need to maybe go a little further to make the candidate feel comfortable during the interview.
Yeah, I feel like there should be like classes for interviewers
There
to
really should be, I agree.
to help them interview better because like you said that they don't want to interview like tens of hundreds of people. They want to, get someone right
No,
away, right?
we just
So
want to like find a good candidate and then move on with our lives.
yeah, that's funny. All right, I do have some comments in the in Facebook. Let me see. The first question is, I've noticed that a lot of virtual interviews that I have been getting are 30 minutes now. Sometimes I've had no chances to speak at all. How would you interject the interviewees to speak about yourself? Interviewers to speak about yourself.
Hmm. It's not often that I encounter a interview situation where the interviewer talks a lot. I know we briefly touch upon how, a really good interview ideally should be more kind of two-way and more conversational. Unfortunately, if you find an interviewer to really be talking a lot, you could like just really politely interrupt them. I'm a little bit biased because I'm on the interviewer side of the table a lot more often now than on the other side. So I can tell you that from my perspective, some I don't tend to people don't tend to know they talk too much, right? So from the interviewer's point of view, they might think like, oh, I'm talking the perfect amount. So if you in an interview situation, you really feel like you haven't been able to talk much about yourself, if you do meet that odd interviewer that really seems to be going on and on and on, um, I don't think there's a really great choice except to interrupt them because it's not likely you're going to get a second interview, right? Especially if it's a phone screen situation. It's very common for you to go from the resume review. You might have one phone conversation with a recruiter, maybe one with a hiring manager, depending on how the company is structured. Possibly then you get to the full panel. Unfortunately, these things are kind of like sequential. I would just say interrupt them if you feel like you haven't been able to get a word in.
Yeah, I kind of agree. Because this is your chance. If you don't tell them everything that you want to say to show them that you're the best candidate, then they're going to come out of it because they, like you said, they're probably oblivious to talking so much that they're going to be like, oh, well, this person didn't really tell me anything. I'm moving on to the next candidate now. So really try to interject yourself. I mean, of course, politely. Don't be like, oh, you've been talking too much. Let me talk now.
Yeah, don't do that.
Uh,
Can I add one more tip on top of that,
yeah.
though? That's not like directly to that comment, but related. I feel like a lot of candidates, they try very hard to sell themselves. So I might say, oh, are you familiar with System X? And then they might say, yes, I'm familiar with System X and also A, B, and C, and D. It's something I see very, very common. And sometimes especially if it's a shorter, like 30-minute conversation, it's to your advantage to keep it relatively concise. If the systems are really related, you can pack them all in. I don't know, Doug, if from your experience you see any of this, but me as an interviewer, I see that a lot. And I understand why, right? You're in an interview, this is your one shot with the company. You really, really want to sell. But maybe we can talk about, what your experience is helping candidates in interview prep.
Yeah, I haven't gotten too much of that because more so than not is that they don't talk enough, because they're either too scared or whatever the case may be. But in that situation, if there was someone that was, in that where they feel like they're very excited and just want to say as much as possible, just like how in the resume you don't want to put everything in the sun and the sun in the under the sun in the resume, you don't want to just tell them everything about yourself in an interview, because the interviewers are looking for things that are specific to the job opening, and any other fluff information is just taking up time and not helping them make a decision. So I agree with you. Is just try to be as concise as possible. If it's related, of course, talk about it. But if it's not related, even if you might think that it's it's kind of related over there, but yeah, just don't include it.
Definitely right on.
Related to that, there's another question. I've come across interviews that are scheduled for an hour and the manager or the recruiter only talks for 15 minutes. Would it be best to try to force the hour or keep it short?
So after 15 minutes, do they keep asking questions or is it just like dead air? That's what I'm interested in because
Yeah.
from the employer's point of view, they're the one that set up that duration, right? Usually as a candidate, you don't really get a choice in how long the interview is going to be. You get notified, hey, we would like to interview you. And then the interview invite comes your way. There's not an option for a longer or shorter one. So usually if I know I'm going to be going into a 1 hour interview, for example, I prepare for that, right? I know, like I said before, for a longer interview, I'll spend a little bit more time on an icebreaker type question. Whereas if I only have 30 minutes with a candidate, I actually realistically only have about 20 minutes that I have to question them, ask questions, but I always try to leave 5 or 10 minutes at the end for questions like the candidate might have for me, right? So I structure my questions differently. It's rare for someone, an employer, to schedule a full hour with you, but they only have like 1 or 2 questions that won't even get you past the first 15 minutes. So I wouldn't say it's anything that you're doing wrong. I think it may be that the interviewer is not well prepared. They don't have anything to say after the first 15 minutes.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a reply that it is dead air after the 15 minutes. So I feel the same way. It might be interviewer error in that they maybe, first of all, maybe not schedule an hour, or maybe they've scheduled an hour for themselves so that they could have time afterwards. Because
Like
some
time afterwards, like for them to like go slack off.
I have no idea. Well, I do know that when I was interviewing, we scheduled for a half hour interviews. These were for hourly roles, but the interview really only took 20 minutes because the last 10 minutes we were putting in our notes and just
I
wrapping
think
up.
that's normal.
So
Yeah,
that's normal,
definitely.
right? It's 10
I think
minutes or
that's
so.
normal. Definitely.
But to have a full hour and then only do 15 minutes, then I think the interviewer is not prepared with enough questions to ask, or they don't know how to ask follow-up questions. Or on the other side, it might be that they've already heard everything they want to hear and they didn't want to move on and ask any more questions. So um, uh, it's tough without knowing more about that specific interview. It's kind of hard to say, but I feel
Yeah.
like it's probably more the interviewer error, not having more things prepared to ask, because that's
Yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about that being like your fault or anything. I do sometimes get a question where people ask me, "Oh, my interview was scheduled for an hour, but the interviewer chose to end it very, very early. Does that mean I did bad?" And at a previous company, when I went through interviewer training, I was taught this. If the interview is going really bad right off the bat, even if you know for sure within like the first 10 minutes, we're not going to go with this candidate, um, is they still recommended the interviewer to still carry out the whole interview, regardless of how you felt about the candidate in the first 10 minutes, even if you know for sure as the interviewer, um, this was like not going to be, this candidate's not going to be suitable, because it's actually a two-way street, right? The candidate is interviewing, you're interviewing the company, actually, as much as they're interviewing you. And a lot of people don't think about it like that, right? So in that situation, you schedule for an hour, and then the interviewer didn't have anything to carry you beyond the first 15 minutes. Maybe that person is the hiring manager for that position. Maybe it would be the person you report to. Then you want to think, do you want to really work for a company or a person that can't even conduct a interview properly, right? So it's kind of like a two-way street.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you said that, and I agree with that as well. You are interviewing them while they're interviewing you, so it's all these, going back and forth, asking each other questions. I mean, that's how an interview can be, as opposed to just you kind of just answering their questions. That's great. Another question: how effective are thank you letters? In my experience, I feel like I haven't appealed to anyone post interview. Additionally, is it effective to include answers to technical questions that could not be answered in the post interview thank you letter?
Um, it's always memorable for me if I get a thank you, assuming that the recruiter. Because usually you don't always get the contact information for the hiring manager or for the interview panel, but you would have the recruiter's contact info. I do remember it. It's memorable, but it's so rare that it happens. I don't personally think it affects your chances of whether the interview becomes like a yay or nay, or whether you would advance to the next stage. In my industry, it probably would not be helpful to include answers that you might have missed in the interview, because to put it bluntly, you could have just like Googled it and then copy pasted the answer in, right? Part of when we're in an interview for a technical position, we're not always looking for knowledge. Because if I wanted knowledge, I go hire Google. I don't need to hire a person. We're trying to hire for intelligence. We're trying to hire for resourcefulness, right? I know you're not going to know all the answers. One of the reasons that people ask knowledge-based questions is to find the limit of your knowledge. And it's not to make you feel bad. Is we need to know how knowledgeable you are for the job, right? Sometimes you get asked a question and it's like knowledge based and you just don't know the answer. The best thing you can do is just say, I don't know. It's not because the interviewer is trying to make you feel bad. It's not that the interviewer is trying to get you to the point where you just don't know what the answer is. They just need to know how knowledgeable you are, especially if it's more like a technical role, right? A good interviewer, I feel like, will ask questions that encourage you to think out loud so that they can actually evaluate what your thought process is, what your logical thinking skills, how well you troubleshoot. So for me, at least for my industry, those are the questions I like to ask. I don't like it when interviewers ask lots of very, very technical, like either you know it or you don't questions, because I'm not trying to quiz like an encyclopedia. I can Google things myself. So I don't generally think that sending those answers in afterwards is useful.
Yeah, great. Let's see. One more question we'll answer. What are some absolute don't do's or don't says in an interview?
God, I could write a novel on this. Well, if you're gonna lie, you should commit. I'm half joking. There's a common question that companies ask, and it's usually if you get a phone screen, a pre-screen with HR or the recruiter before you get to your interview panel, a lot of times people will want to know whether you're with your current company, and if so, why are you looking to leave that company? Okay, this is where I need all of you to lie. Okay, because if the truth is you're leaving your company because you hate your company, you don't like the company culture, you hate your boss, you hate your team, and you tell that to the next company you're going to go interview with, they're going to think, oh, you had issues with your boss, you didn't get along with others. That's what they're going to think. Oh, you didn't like the company culture for some reason. Does that mean you're not going to like our company culture, right? So that might be the case. I think the statistics is that a lot of people leave their job because of their boss, right? That's just a statistic. If you get asked that question, please lie, and then please commit. A really, really great, there's some great lies. I don't know, Doug is shaking his head, but like, I'm sorry, this is where you just have to like come up with an answer out of the back of your pocket, ready to go. This is so common, right? Common lies include, there just wasn't the professional development or career advancement opportunities that you're looking for in your current position or will be available in the company, right? So let's say you are, I don't know, junior sales, and then you want to eventually move into like a senior position, and there just happens to not be an advancement opportunity within the company. That's totally cool. So write that down. That's a lie I can give you. Doug, you can probably think of some other ones, but you just need to have that answer in the back of your pocket. That's sunk a few candidates in my time. When they did the phone screen with recruiting, that's the answer they gave, and we just unfortunately had to shred their resume up.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think what I can kind of package it in the sense is that you should not be negative in your interview, in any of your answers. So if they are asking you about why you're looking to leave your job, don't be negative about it. Find something that is, I mean, I I don't really want people to lie, but maybe if you just
I
need
want
like
people to lie.
maybe if you just need to
For that specific question, I think it's
well,
okay.
maybe if you just
But
need
if
to
you
exaggerate
just
a
need to
little bit.
you just need to commit. And they're not gonna usually companies won't grill you about why you left if you pick up one of these standard answers. But that's just a very common one. Companies just don't want to know that you're leaving because you didn't get along with the people at your previous company, because they automatically think, well, what if you don't get along with the people in our company if we hire you?
I agree. I agree. I mean, yeah, like you said, even if that is truly the answer, anything that has to do with like a manager being horrible or your team being horrible, then you don't want to talk about it. There has to be something else that you don't like about your job, and just use that as your
I wouldn't even
excuse.
say there's something about the job you don't like necessarily.
Well, I mean,
I would just stay clear about like anything that you don't like. I would say, like you said, I would avoid the negative, just
negatives,
keep it
yeah,
positive. If
right.
there's a reason you can find or an alibi you can think of that's not related to the company at all, that's even great.
I agree. I agree. That's a very good. Whoever asked that question, thank you for asking that. That's very good. Well, I don't want to take up too much of your time. I think this has been so valuable for me, but also hopefully for everyone that's been watching. If you are interested in more content like this, then please join my Facebook group. It's called Land the Job of Your Dreams. I'm going to put it in the comments right now. Joey, where can we find you?
I am actually a YouTuber, and I'm also on Instagram. My handle on both of them is just Joey T. And I'm
Just
sure you're
Joey.
gonna link it somewhere in like the description or on your Facebook page. But yeah, you can
Yes.
find me online. I don't usually talk about hiring or that kind of stuff, but I've got other interesting content up on YouTube that you're all free to browse when you're not at work.
That is true. But look at it, look at his video quality. It's so amazing. So you can expect that in all of his videos. All right, guys. Like I said, I will link Joey's stuff in our video here, but also check out the group. Would love to have you join us. Well, thank you so much. Have a
Thanks,
great day,
Doug.
everyone.
Bye, everyone.